Engineering specialist Ethan Ward had been maintaining atmospheric systems in the Velshari Royal Palace for exactly 13 days, and he was beginning to suspect that alien architecture had been specifically designed to make routine mechanical work as complicated as possible. The palace sprawled across crystalline spires that defied basic physics, with environmental controls distributed through corridors that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human spatial reasoning typically accommodated. Atmospheric Processor Junction 12 is showing efficiency anomalies again, Ethan reported through his comm system, navigating corridors decorated with art that appeared to be simultaneously paintings, sculptures, and possibly mathematical proofs. I'm heading there now to check whether it's actual mechanical problems or just cultural differences in what constitutes optimal air quality. Copy that, Ward, came the response from Engineering Command. Remember, you're working in a royal palace during active treaty negotiations. Try not to accidentally trigger any diplomatic incidents involving inappropriate equipment maintenance procedures. Ethan made his way through sections of the palace that had been designated as training grounds for the Velshari warrior caste, whose combat prowess was legendary throughout the sector. The sound of weapons clashing echoed through crystalline halls as warriors practiced techniques that combined martial arts with what appeared to be interpretive dance and possibly higher mathematics. The training hall he passed through was filled with Velshari warriors engaged in sparring matches that made human combat training look like amateur athletics. They moved with predatory grace, their pointed ears and luminescent markings creating the impression of beings who'd been designed by evolution to be both beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Ethan paused to watch one particularly intense match between two fighters whose skill levels seemed evenly matched. One of them, a woman whose silver hair was tied back in a practical warrior's braid, executed a complex maneuver that would have been impressive if her opponent hadn't countered with a strike that sent her stumbling backward toward the edge of the training platform. The stumble became a fall, momentum carrying her toward a drop that would result in a hard landing on crystalline floors that definitely weren't designed for comfort. Ethan's brain processed the situation through the lens of engineering physics, trajectory, velocity, impact force, and concluded that someone was about to get hurt unless someone else intervened immediately. His body moved before his conscious mind finished evaluating the diplomatic implications of interrupting a warrior training exercise. He rushed forward, reaching out to catch the falling warrior's arm and steady her before momentum could complete what gravity had started. "Careful there," he said, helping her regain her balance on the platform's edge. "These floors look like they'd make for a really uncomfortable landing." The moment his hand touched hers, the entire training hall fell silent. Every warrior present immediately dropped to one knee in a formal bow that made the air feel heavy with significance Ethan couldn't interpret. The woman he just helped, whose violet eyes were now studying him with an intensity that suggested he'd just done something considerably more complex than preventing an injury, made a gesture that somehow conveyed both gratitude and something that might have been amusement. "You," she said, her voice carrying an accent that made standard Galactic sound like poetry, "are either very brave or very uninformed about palace protocol." Ethan looked around at the bowing warriors, then at the woman whose arm he was still steadying, then back at the warriors with growing awareness that his helpful gesture had triggered consequences that his engineering training hadn't prepared him for. "I'm going to guess, very uninformed is the correct answer here," he said, carefully releasing her arm while trying to maintain the kind of professional composure that his diplomatic briefings had insisted was essential during cultural exchanges. "Did I just violate some sort of combat tradition by interrupting the match?" "You didn't violate combat tradition," replied one of the warriors, his voice carrying the formal tones of someone delivering news that would require significant explanation. "You invoked the right of recognition by offering protective assistance to royalty during a combat trial." Royalty. Ethan looked at the woman he'd helped, noting details that his mechanical focus had missed during the emergency. The subtle differences in her armor that suggested higher quality materials, the way other warriors had been giving her more space during the sparring, and the luminescent markings beneath her skin that pulsed with patterns that seemed more complex than the others present. Princess Sira Velthara, she said with a slight smile that suggested she found his confusion endearing rather than offensive. Heir to the Velshari throne, commander of the palace guard, and apparently the subject of spontaneous rescue attempts by human engineers who prioritize injury prevention over political awareness. Ethan felt his brain attempting to process the information that his helpful mechanical instincts had just involved him in some sort of royal protocol that extended far beyond simple courtesy. "I apologize, Your Highness. I didn't realize. I just saw someone about to fall and reacted without thinking about the political implications." "That," Princess Sira said, her luminescent markings shifting to colors that his cultural briefings suggested indicated satisfaction, "is precisely why the right of recognition exists. To identify individuals whose protective instincts operate independently of political calculation." The what right? An ancient law that tests potential allies through their spontaneous reactions to royal vulnerability, explained the warrior who'd spoken earlier, his formal tones carrying what might have been approval. "By offering assistance without knowledge of her status, you have demonstrated the kind of genuine character that transcends strategic advantage-seeking." Ethan looked around the training hall, noting that every warrior present was still bowing in a display of respect that seemed directed at him rather than the princess he'd helped. "So by preventing an injury I accidentally, what? Triggered some sort of royal recognition ceremony. You activated provisional consort witness status," Princess Sira replied, her expression mixing amusement with something deeper. "Which grants you access to court proceedings, treaty negotiations, and diplomatic protocols affecting the peace process between our species." "Consort witness status," Ethan repeated slowly, his engineering mind trying to process social protocols that operated on principles considerably more complex than atmospheric system maintenance. "That sounds like it involves significantly more responsibility than routine equipment repair." "Considerably more," Princess Sira agreed, gesturing for the other warriors to rise from their formal bows. "But the right of recognition cannot be artificially triggered. Your protective instinct was genuine, which means your character has been tested and found worthy of trust that extends beyond political convenience." As the warriors returned to their training, and Princess Sira invited Ethan to follow her to a more private location for explanation of what exactly he'd just accidentally activated, he realized that his routine maintenance assignment had just become considerably more complicated than fixing atmospheric processors. The question was whether complicated meant interesting diplomatic opportunity or career-ending violation of protocols involving spontaneous rescue of alien royalty during combat training exercises. Given his luck with routine assignments that turned unexpectedly significant, Ethan was prepared for either possibility. The royal audience chamber looked like it had been designed by someone who understood that important conversations should take place in environments that projected both authority and the subtle warning that making poor decisions in this space would have consequences extending across star systems. Princess Sira settled into a chair that managed to be simultaneously throne-like and surprisingly casual, while Ethan stood trying to maintain the professional composure his engineering training insisted was essential during unexpected meetings with alien royalty. "The right of recognition," Princess Sira began, activating holographic displays that showed centuries of Velshari tradition, "exists because our warrior culture values genuine loyalty over political maneuvering. When someone outside the warrior caste demonstrates protective instinct toward royalty without knowledge of their status, it indicates character that transcends strategic calculation." So you regularly disguise yourself among palace warriors to test people's reactions. I regularly participate in warrior training to maintain combat proficiency and evaluate the sincerity of those around me. Her luminescent markings shifted to patterns that Ethan was beginning to recognize as indicating honesty. The right activates automatically when certain conditions are met: spontaneous protective action, absence of political motivation, and genuine concern for welfare rather than advantage. Ethan studied the holographic displays showing previous activations of the rite, noting that most of them involved Velshari warriors rather than human engineers. What exactly does provisional consort witness status involve in practical terms? Access to court proceedings that affect treaty negotiations, authority to observe diplomatic sessions, and the legal standing to provide testimony regarding matters of interspecies cooperation. Princess Sira highlighted authorization levels that made Ethan's routine maintenance clearance look like elementary access permissions. Also, the right to approach royal family members directly rather than through proper diplomatic channels. That seems like significant authority to grant based on preventing someone from falling. The authority exists because individuals who demonstrate genuine protective instinct without political motivation tend to make better advisors than those who seek power through traditional channels. She activated intelligence displays that showed the complexity of the treaty negotiation. Because both sides don't want peace, both species have extremist factions that profit from continued conflict. Princess Sira's expression grew grim. The right of recognition has granted you access to information that reveals the scope of the sabotage. What kind of sabotage? She activated new displays showing technical specifications that made Ethan's routine atmospheric maintenance suddenly seem considerably more significant. The palace's environmental systems have been modified to distribute trace amounts of aggression-enhancing chemicals during key negotiation sessions. Subtle enough to avoid detection by standard monitoring, but effective enough to ensure diplomatic discussions always end in hostility. Ethan studied the technical modifications, his mechanical expertise immediately identifying design elements that shouldn't exist in routine atmospheric processors. These chemical distribution patterns, they're not random malfunctions. Someone with detailed knowledge of both Velshari biology and human atmospheric engineering deliberately modified these systems. Someone with access to both species' technical databases and the motivation to ensure treaty negotiations fail repeatedly. Princess Sira's markings pulsed with patterns that indicated controlled anger. The extremist factions funding the sabotage include weapons manufacturers, security contractors, and corporate interests that profit from maintaining profitable conflicts. And you believe I can help expose this conspiracy because I accidentally invoked an ancient recognition right by preventing an injury. I believe you can help because your engineering expertise provides the technical knowledge needed to document the sabotage. Your provisional status grants legal authority that extremists can't easily dismiss, and your spontaneous protective instinct suggests someone whose moral priorities align with peace rather than profit. Princess Sira's violet eyes held depths that suggested the conversation was moving beyond simple political necessity. Also, you helped me without knowing who I was, which indicates character that transcends strategic advantage-seeking. Ethan looked at the evidence of systematic sabotage, then at the alien princess, whose obvious competence was matched by her vulnerability to political manipulation from factions that preferred their rulers more easily controlled. What happens if I formally accept the consort witness status, rather than leaving it provisional? Then you become permanently bound to court proceedings that affect millions of lives, responsible for testimony that could either save the peace process or destroy it, and targeted for elimination by the same extremist factions whose profitable warmongering depends on preventing successful treaty negotiations. She paused, her expression mixing honesty with something that might have been hope. Also, you become permanently attached to royal protocols that involve significantly more ceremonial responsibility than atmospheric system maintenance typically requires. And if I refuse the formal recognition, then the provisional status expires within 72 hours. You return to routine engineering duties, and I continue searching for allies whose genuine character can be trusted with information that affects the survival of both our species. Princess Sira's markings shifted to colors that suggested resignation mixed with understanding. I would not blame you for choosing the simpler path. Ethan examined the technical evidence of sabotage that had been hidden in systems he'd been maintaining for nearly 2 weeks, feeling professional responsibility warring with self-preservation instincts. These atmospheric modifications aren't just affecting treaty negotiations. They're creating health hazards for everyone in the palace, regardless of species. The extremists care more about profitable conflicts than the safety of diplomatic personnel. Then we need to document the modifications, expose the conspiracy, and fix the equipment before someone gets seriously hurt. Ethan accessed the palace's technical schematics, his engineering mind automatically planning repair procedures that would eliminate the sabotage. Though I have to warn you, I'm significantly better at fixing atmospheric processors than navigating royal politics. And I am significantly better at royal politics than repairing atmospheric processors. Princess Sira replied with a smile that transformed her from tactical strategist to someone considerably more appealing. Perhaps that is why the right of recognition brought us together. As they began planning the investigation that would either expose galactic-scale conspiracy or get them both killed by extremist factions, Ethan realized that his routine maintenance assignment had become the most important engineering work of his career. The question was whether he could survive long enough to complete the repairs. The sabotage investigation proceeded with the kind of careful planning that combined Ethan's mechanical expertise with Princess Sira's tactical knowledge of palace security. They worked together in what had been designated as a technical consultation chamber, but which Ethan suspected was actually a secure location where conversations couldn't be monitored by the same extremist factions whose equipment modifications they were investigating. The atmospheric processors in the main negotiation hall show the most sophisticated modifications, Ethan reported, displaying technical schematics that revealed deliberate design changes hidden beneath layers of routine maintenance records. Whoever did this had expert knowledge of both human atmospheric engineering and Velshari biological responses to chemical stimulation, which suggests collaboration between extremists from both our species, Princess Sira said, highlighting communication intercepts that showed coordination between human weapons manufacturers and Velshari traditionalists opposed to peace. The conspiracy extends to the highest levels of both governments. Ethan studied the evidence, noting patterns that painted a picture of systematic manipulation, designed to ensure treaty negotiations failed regardless of how much both species leadership genuinely wanted peace. These chemical modifications are timed to activate during specific negotiation sessions. Someone with detailed knowledge of the diplomatic schedule has been coordinating the sabotage. The palace steward's office manages the negotiation schedules, Princess Sira said quietly, activating personnel records that showed individuals whose financial transactions suggested corporate funding, including several officials whose loyalty appears to be more profit-motivated than species-based. So we're dealing with a conspiracy that spans both species, involves high-level palace officials, and has been systematically poisoning diplomatic negotiations for 8 months. Ethan leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of responsibility that came with discovering evidence that could either save the peace process or get them killed by the people they were investigating. What's our next move? Document everything, prepare testimony that can be presented to neutral arbiters, and hope we can expose the conspiracy before the extremists realize we've discovered their sabotage. Princess Sira's expression grew thoughtful, though there is one complication we need to address. Just one. The formal ratification of your consort witness status requires a public ceremony that will make our investigation visible to everyone in the palace. Her luminescent markings shifted to patterns that indicated concern mixed with determination. Once the ceremony is complete, the extremists will know we're a threat to their profitable warmongering. So we'll become targets for elimination. Precisely. But without formal ratification, your testimony regarding the sabotage lacks the legal authority needed to trigger investigations that can't be blocked by corrupt officials. She activated legal documents that showed the complex requirements for prosecuting conspiracy cases spanning multiple species. The right of recognition grants authority that transcends normal diplomatic channels, but only after formal ceremony confirms the bond. Ethan looked at the evidence they'd compiled, then at the alien princess, whose obvious competence was matched by her vulnerability to the same political forces they were investigating. How long do we have before the provisional status expires? 48 hours. After that, either we formalize the bond or it dissolves permanently. And if we formalize it, then you become permanently responsible for court testimony that affects millions of lives, tied to royal protocols that govern your daily activities, and married to someone whose political position makes her a constant target for assassination by factions that prefer their rulers more compliant. Princess Sira's honesty was brutal and complete. The consort witness bond isn't just political alliance. It includes personal partnership that operates under rules you're still learning to navigate. Personal partnership, Ethan repeated, as in marriage, yes. The right of recognition combines political authority with personal commitment because Velshari tradition holds that the most trustworthy advisors are those whose personal investment guarantees loyal counsel rather than strategic manipulation. Ethan studied her expression, noting that the luminescent patterns beneath her skin had shifted to colors that suggested vulnerability despite her obvious tactical competence. You've been testing potential consorts through these disguised training sessions. How many times has the right activated? You're the first in 3 years of regular warrior training participation. Her admission carried weight that transcended simple statistics. Most individuals who witness what appears to be a warrior in difficulty either ignore it as part of normal training or calculate political advantages before offering assistance. Your spontaneous protective instinct was rare. So when you stumbled during that sparring match, I genuinely lost my balance due to a particularly effective strike. The situation was authentic, not staged. Your response was the test, and you passed through spontaneous action rather than calculated intervention. Ethan looked at the technical evidence of sabotage that required exposure, then at the political requirements that demanded formal bonding, then at the alien woman whose genuine character had been revealed through weeks of working together on investigation that put both their lives at risk. The ceremony that formalizes the bond, he said finally, what exactly does it involve? Vows that establish shared responsibility for royal testimony, biointegration protocols that create emotional resonance between bonded partners, and public declaration that you accept permanent attachment to someone whose political position makes your life considerably more complicated. Princess Sira's smile suggested she understood the impossible situation she was asking him to accept. Also, ceremonial elements that activate ancient technologies designed to enhance interspecies cooperation through neural synchronization. Neural synchronization. Velshari consort bonds include shared emotional awareness, coordinated tactical thinking, and the ability to sense each other's physical and mental states through bioresonance connection. She activated displays showing the technical specifications. It's intimate, in ways that might be difficult to navigate if the partnership is purely political convenience. Ethan examined the biointegration protocols, his engineering mind analyzing systems that operated on principles human technology hadn't approached. This isn't just marriage, it's permanent neurological connection. The bond was designed to ensure that royal advisors whose testimony affects millions of lives maintain genuine investment in protecting those they counsel. Princess Sira's markings pulsed with patterns that indicated both hope and resignation. I would understand if you choose to refuse formal ratification. The responsibility is considerable, and the personal implications extend far beyond what you signed up for when you accepted a routine maintenance assignment. Ethan looked at the sabotage evidence that needed exposure, the legal requirements that demanded formal authority, and the genuine partnership that had developed while they'd worked together to protect a peace process that extremist factions wanted to destroy. "You know," he said with a grin, "when I helped you up during that training match, I thought the worst possible outcome would be a lecture about not interrupting warrior exercises. And now I'm realizing that the best possible outcome involves permanent neurological connection to someone whose intelligence, tactical competence, and obvious dedication to protecting peace makes the personal implications look like the easy part of the relationship." Princess Sira's smile transformed her from political strategist to someone whose appeal transcended species barriers and cultural differences. "So you're accepting formal ratification?" "I'm accepting everything that comes with it," Ethan replied, feeling certainty settle despite the impossible complexity of the situation. Including the biointegration, the shared emotional awareness, and whatever ceremonial elements are required to prove that some bonds are worth forming even when extremist factions prefer their diplomatic personnel isolated and vulnerable to manipulation. As they began planning the ceremony that would either formalize their bond or provide perfect opportunity for assassination by the conspirators they'd been investigating, Ethan realized that his routine engineering assignment had become something far more significant than atmospheric maintenance. The formal ratification ceremony took place in the palace's central hall, with diplomatic observers from both species watching as Ethan and Princess Sira exchanged vows that were simultaneously marriage promises and legal authorizations for testimony that could dismantle conspiracy networks spanning both civilizations. The hall's bioresonance amplifiers had been activated despite security concerns, broadcasting the ceremony across human and Velshari space to ensure that any attempt to disrupt the proceedings would be witnessed by billions. "The right of recognition," announced High Counselor Thane, as bioscanners confirmed Ethan's neural integration with Velshari ceremonial systems, "binds not merely two individuals, but affirms that genuine character transcends species barriers and political calculation." Ethan felt consciousness expanding as the biointegration protocols activated, awareness of emotional resonance and tactical coordination, flooding his mind with sensations that made his engineering training seem like elementary education. Through the developing bond, he could sense Princess Sira's thoughts, her strategic planning, and her genuine affection for him that had grown alongside their investigation of sabotage. "I promise," Ethan said, his voice carrying new harmonics as biointegration affected his vocal patterns, "to learn proper palace protocol, since apparently being recognized as a royal consort involves significantly more ceremonial responsibility than atmospheric processor maintenance typically requires." The laughter that rippled through the assembly helped ease tension of performing wedding ceremonies, while preparing to expose galactic conspiracy to diplomatic representatives who had authority to trigger investigations across multiple star systems. "And I promise," Princess Sira replied, "to explain Velshari court politics patiently, even when crisis situations require testimony that combines human engineering evidence with alien tactical analysis in ways that neither species has attempted. The moment their vows concluded, the bioresonance bond activated completely, linking their consciousness in ways that made individual awareness seem incomplete. Ethan felt Princess Sira's tactical knowledge integrating with his mechanical expertise, creating shared understanding that exceeded what either could achieve independently. "The saboteurs are moving," Princess Sira said, though their shared awareness meant Ethan was already accessing the same intelligence through their synchronized consciousness. 12 separate infiltration attempts coordinated to disrupt the ceremony and eliminate witnesses to conspiracy evidence. "I can see them," Ethan replied, their shared tactical awareness providing real-time updates on hostile positions throughout the palace. "But I can also see the atmospheric system modifications from here. The biointegration is giving me access to palace systems I didn't know existed." The attack came from multiple directions simultaneously, with assassination teams targeting the ceremony, the broadcast equipment, and the diplomatic observers whose testimony could expose the war profiteering network. But the coordinated response demonstrated why the right of recognition created shared authority. "All security teams, coordinate defensive responses using the palace atmospheric systems as tactical assets," Ethan commanded, his awareness spanning both human engineering knowledge and Velshari defensive protocols through bioresonance bond. "I can override the sabotaged modifications and use the atmospheric processors to create zones where the chemical agents affect hostiles rather than defenders. All warrior units integrate with human security personnel using enhanced coordination that bioresonance synchronization provides," Princess Sira added, their shared consciousness allowing complex tactical coordination without communication delays. "Protect the diplomatic observers. Their testimony will ensure the conspiracy cannot be suppressed through normal political channels." The battle lasted less than an hour, but it provided undeniable proof that human technical expertise paired with Velshari tactical knowledge could accomplish things neither species could manage independently. The assassination attempts failed. The conspiracy evidence was broadcast across the galaxy, and the diplomatic observers had witnessed cooperation that exceeded anything either civilization had achieved alone. "All hostile forces neutralized," reported Captain Reynolds from Human Security. "The sabotage network has been exposed, and the evidence is already triggering investigations on both sides." More importantly, High Counselor Thane added with satisfaction, "the ceremony has demonstrated that right of recognition bonds provide the kind of genuine partnership that makes future manipulation by extremist factions essentially impossible." 6 months later, Ethan found himself reviewing atmospheric system specifications from his office in the Royal Technical Advisory Council, a position that combined his mechanical expertise with his authority as Princess Sira's formal consort witness. Through the viewing portal, he could see the construction of additional diplomatic facilities that were being designed around bioresonance principles that had proven effective for interspecies coordination. "The integration reports are encouraging," Princess Sira said, entering his office with documents showing successful right of recognition partnerships developing throughout both civilizations. "Apparently, our accidental bonding has inspired quite a few deliberate ones among individuals whose duties involve interspecies cooperation. Any concerns about the permanent nature of bioresonance bonds?" "Only that individual consciousness feels incomplete after experiencing shared awareness," she replied, settling beside his desk with comfortable intimacy that had developed alongside their professional partnership. "The biointegration has spoiled me for relationships that don't include shared thoughts and coordinated planning." Ethan accessed their bond patterns, marveling at how completely their consciousness had merged while maintaining individual identities. Sometimes I can't tell where my engineering analysis ends and your tactical strategy begins. Does that bother you? It should bother me. Human psychology values individual autonomy and separate decision-making. He looked at her, noting how luminescent patterns beneath her skin synchronized with his emotional states. But somehow, shared consciousness feels complete in ways that individual awareness never did. The bioresonance was designed to enhance rather than replace individual identity, Princess Sira said, her markings shifting to patterns indicating deep contentment. You're still uniquely yourself. I'm still uniquely myself. We just happen to be uniquely ourselves together. Together, Ethan repeated, feeling the truth resonate through their shared consciousness. Sometimes I think the biointegration reveals that awareness was always meant to be shared. As they settled into evening coordination of palace systems, a practice that strengthened their bioresonance while maintaining individual perspectives that made their partnership effective, Ethan reflected on the journey from accidental protective gesture to permanent partnership with someone whose consciousness complemented his own in ways he'd never imagined. Any regrets about helping me up during that training match? Only, Princess Sira said with the smile that had become his favorite part of their shared awareness, that it took a combat trial and corporate conspiracy to meet someone whose protective